The fourth and final season of Succession is about to premiere, and I am bracing myself for another round of discourse about whether or not you're supposed to like these characters. I've seen this same discourse play out in other fandoms, but it seems to have reached new heights with Succession. It seems like hating these entitled billionaires is the bar for entry, and anyone who likes them is missing the point. But the thing is, I like all the characters, or at least all the main characters in Succession. I tend to only really love a show if I love the characters, if they feel real or relatable to me in some way. Which doesn't mean they can't be objectively awful in a bunch of other ways, they just have to have something sympathetically human at their core for me to latch onto. Then I'm sold. And I think Succession does this really well, and I would argue on purpose. So I get a little annoyed when other fans profess that you're not supposed to like the characters, that not liking them is the correct way to engage with the show. So that's basically what I want to explore in this video. What is the value of liking characters who do bad things? To the extent that we know authorial intent, are you in fact supposed to like them? And how did this discourse become so pervasive? Spoiler alert, it was Breaking Bad. We'll cover some other shows about bad people in our discussion here, but since the fourth and final season of Succession is about to premiere, let's start there.
Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and Staten, from the Battery to the top of Manhattan. Asian, Middle Eastern, and Latin, black, white, New York, you make it happen. Brownstones, water towers, trees, skyscrapers.
I think the "you're not supposed to like the characters" discourse has actually been most intense with Succession. It's an echo of things I've heard about other shows, but I've never heard it quite this often or from so many people. I think it's mostly due to how topical and relevant the show is to our current cultural and political climate. Income inequality in America and worldwide has accelerated, and the real-life billionaires of our world are widely hated and mocked figures, at least in left-leaning online spaces, which tend to heavily overlap with fandom. So there's some cognitive dissonance if you're gonna go from tweeting "fuck Elon Musk" to posting a Kendall Roy fan cam, right?
I'm so sick of 17. Where's my fucking teenage dream? If someone tells me one more time, enjoy your youth, I'm gonna cry.
I mean, Elon Musk and Kendall Roy are friends. He went to Kendall's birthday party. While I think it's obvious that Succession is critical of the economic system it portrays, it's a brilliant takedown of the myth of meritocracy, there's still the sticky subject of empathy. Most viewers can't help but grow to feel for the characters in the system, even if they get the message that the system is bad. So I guess the most interesting question here is, does it help or hurt Succession's critique on capitalism when its fans love the characters who perpetuate and advocate for the very system it's criticizing? I would say that it strengthens the critique. The fact that we can understand and on some level relate to the characters in the show makes it clearer that the actual problem is our economic and political system, not the individual people in power. And that means that the solution isn't just putting different people in power, but actually, oh God, what do we do? It's art, okay? It's not solutions oriented. And I know that saying it's the system isn't groundbreaking. It's literally a meme. But to the extent that Succession is an argument, I think it's a well-made one. The character of Tom Wambsgans really speaks to me in this sense. He's not from this world, but he's so desperate to fit in that he blatantly abuses those beneath him while still convincing himself he's an underdog. He knows the Cruz's situation is bad, but he didn't do any of it himself, and he covered it up out of fear and loyalty, but I think that's an understandable thing to do. And Kendall Roy did a Chappaquiddick in the season 1 finale, but he's the point of view character of this whole incident and its aftermath, and I think there's something terribly human about his instinct to run away, to pretend it didn't happen. His brother Roman exhibits the same instinct in the same episode, when he literally washes his hands of the rocket launch disaster that injured and could have killed people. These are reactions that are honestly relatable to me, as cowardly and despicable as they are. That urge to run away from a horrible accident and try to dodge consequences, I think a lot of people would act similarly. Just most of us don't have the power and family connections to get away with it. One of my favorite quotes from the creator of Succession, Jesse Armstrong, when asked about the unlikability of the characters, said, "I don't even think they're that bad. They're like Greek gods. The only thing that's wrong with them is how much they're able to do in the world. I think if I was thrown into that pool, I would swim in that way." Now, a lot of people claim they don't relate to the Succession characters. I'm not calling them liars. I just think that some people might want to believe they're better people than they really are. Look, I think it's healthy to recognize your darker, meaner, cowardly urges so that you can choose not to act on them. And it can be cathartic to see characters act in those ways on screen where it doesn't actually hurt anyone. I'm trying not to use sympathizing with a character as a synonym for liking them, but for me personally, it's the same thing. I recognize that that's not the case for everyone. But we're gonna make two little shifts in my argument here, and I'm gonna hold your hand through it. Don't worry, we'll get through this. One, I think we're muddying the water a little bit by talking about liking a character, which is very subjective, as opposed to empathizing with that character. We're gonna have a more productive conversation if we talk about empathy. And two, I think when people say you're not supposed to like the character, they're actually talking about empathy as well. I mean, people don't really trot this argument out when someone enjoys watching a two-dimensional villain, right? No one was mad that everyone loved Lalo Salamanca in Better Call Saul. Not to say he was two-dimensional, he's actually super complex. Did I say complex? I meant sexy. This backlash tends to only crop up when there's real empathy for the character. When people make sad Kendall Roy fan cams set to Phoebe Bridgers songs, right? I made that one was me. So now this video is called You're Not Supposed to Empathize with the Characters. Less catchy, but we're all on the same page again. I'm not gonna argue that you're supposed to like the Succession characters, which I think is kind of stupid and subjective to say one way or the other. But I do think you're supposed to have empathy for at least some of them. I mean, take your pick. I don't think that Succession is doing something super groundbreaking here. Works of fiction need to have that human connection with their audience. It would be weird if they were trying to dodge that entirely. The characters in Succession are accurate human portraits in all their petty, pathetic glory, and seeing that reflected could either cause you to hate them or love them. People tend to have strong feelings about these characters. There isn't much ambivalence. For instance, Roman Roy's probably my favorite at this point. He stole my heart during season 3, sorry Kendall, but my dad hates Roman. He has ranted about Roman as if he is a real person. Roman doesn't bring anything to the table. Everyone else is trying to get things done, and Roman's just sitting there making stupid comments. God forbid short kings do anything. Do I wish that everyone loved Roman? Absolutely. But it's not gonna happen. The only thing I ask as we gear up for our final season of Succession Twitter discourse is for everyone to understand that liking these characters from a place of empathy doesn't mean that the grand artistic vision of the show went over your head. Seeing these characters as basically normal people with way too much power and influence is actually kind of the point of the show. If you're fixating on hating them, maybe you're the one who missed the point. When it comes to a comedy series, such as It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I think the "you're not supposed to like the characters" argument gets a lot more mileage. Glenn Howerton, who plays Dennis, has said that their intent is to skewer and not celebrate the characters' bad behavior. These characters are not meant to be aspirational, and some of the funniest moments in the show are when they get their comeuppance. Now, a lot of fans of Sunny don't like season 1, or at least don't think that it represents what the show has become. I am a season 1 of Sunny apologist because I'm a woman of taste, and I think this first season is not only great, but has the bones of what makes this comedy about bad people work. From the very beginning, so many of the jokes are directly at the main character's expense.
There's one little issue. Yeah.
Oh!
Oh, good! I think you broke my nose.
That guy's beating on that chick.
Oh my god!
Oh no, you know, it's a dude. Yeah, she has a penis, so it's okay.
Dude, is that a hate crime? Shit, yeah, it's a hate crime.
A lot of the comedy setups in Always Sunny go in one of these two ways. The gang tries to help someone, but they are so incompetent and insane and oblivious that they end up hurting that person. Or the gang tries to do something bad, but they are so incompetent and insane and oblivious that they just end up hurting themselves.
You guys all better eat a dick, 'cause Sweet D beat the system.
The second example is more of a karmic justice approach. What goes around comes around. But both setups play on expectations in a fun way. The gang rarely executes a plan the way they intend to. So the show is not subtle. The comedy stems from the fact that the gang are pathetic, stunted losers who are constantly failing at everything they attempt. But I still like them. They're funny, okay? What am I supposed to do? I'm just an empath and it tugs at my heartstrings to see people constantly flopping this hard. I don't think I'm not supposed to like them. I think you're supposed to cringe at them, but we cringe when empathy makes us uncomfortable, right? The high school reunion 2-part episode is a cringe fest, but also one of the most sympathetic episodes for the gang. Their delusions are revealed and they are completely humiliated, and they keep behaving monstrously through this entire evening, but you still kind of feel bad for them, right? I don't feel contempt watching them humiliate themselves. I'm not on the side of the other characters who do hate them. Instead, I feel that kind of sticky, cringy empathy. Dee's behavior in these episodes is particularly fun to me. She becomes so mean, especially to her only real friends, in an attempt to gain some social power that she never had in high school. And look, I had a back brace in high school, so I just have to say, Dee, girl, I get it. Only tall girls with scoliosis can comment on what she did in that episode, and we know she did nothing wrong. Everything justified. The Always Sunny podcast has been a really fun listen since it started, and Rob, Charlie, and Glenn have frequently brought up that they try to keep the characters feeling a little real, a little grounded. They acknowledge that the line has shifted since the show started, but it's still a consideration. What feels real within this universe they've constructed? They don't want to lose sight of that and create caricatures. Rob McElhenney described the show as satirized ignorance, but also owns up to being one of the ignorant white men that the show is satirizing. Being able to laugh at yourself and recognize your own ignorance and shortcomings is important. And that's a lot easier to do if the characters have some sympathetic qualities. I know that I personally felt very called out by the scene where Mac and Dennis argue about evolution, and Mac asks Dennis if he's ever actually pored over the data himself. And Dennis, the college-educated atheist, has to reveal that no, his beliefs are based on faith, same as Mac. Always Sunny is definitely not some kind of public service announcement. Look upon these racist losers and despair. Do not become like them. No, it's more of a heightened, exaggerated look at real human behavior and feelings. It's a good comedy, and I don't think it could be a good comedy without having that sense. We need to empathize with these characters a little bit, or the whole thing falls apart.
Okay, so pop culture inherently normalizes things, and that power works both ways. It can normalize things for good, like how Dancing Ellen makes middle America less afraid of gay people, but it can also normalize things for bad, like what Jack Bauer did for torture, or what Jimmy Fallon did for lip syncing. So, when we give a platform to known abusers like Vance Wagner, that's an example of...
I love Diane because I love annoying women. I would love to co-host a podcast with her. Season 5 of BoJack Horseman is when the show gained self-awareness about the type of show that it was and how it was being reacted to. And in Season 5, there was a fictional show within the show called Filbert that was used to examine the impact of fiction that centers on a sad, bad man. What is the outcome of viewers seeing themselves in a character like Filbert or like BoJack? Does it help them justify their own actions and placate them, even if the intent of the show is to criticize?
We've all done terrible things that we deeply regret. I've done so many unforgivable things. And I think that that's what this show says, is that we're all terrible, so therefore we're all okay.
What?
Diane was brought on as a writer for Filbert, specifically to make the lead character more vulnerable and sympathetic. which she says made it a better show, but also had an unintended consequence, that the audience would overlook or even justify his actions simply because they like him and relate to him.
That's not the point of Filbert, for guys to watch it and feel okay.
So yeah, this all sounds familiar, right? This plotline is very meta, since BoJack, the character, shares a lot of similarities with Filbert, enough that the line between reality and fiction blurs as the season goes on. So the show is asking itself, do we need to change something here so that our audience doesn't misunderstand us? So that they don't watch BoJack and feel okay? Which, I don't know, I think BoJack fans are all masochists, so I don't think any of us are out here feeling okay. But looking at what they did in the final season, season 6, we can see how they handled this big question. BoJack the show never truly asked us to stop feeling empathy for BoJack the character, but it tested our limits a little. He reached his lowest lows in the final season, and some additional information was given to the audience that really changed how we view him. It was revealed that he was more directly responsible for Sarah Lynn's death than we had previously known. And along with this downward spiral, BoJack was punished with a series of consequences. He lost many close relationships, he literally went to jail, he was canceled on Twitter even. But I think they understood that condemning BoJack wasn't enough. If some segment of their audience was over-identifying with BoJack, then just seeing him beaten down and punished at the end, surely they would just feel rejected and maybe pushed further into a sense of victimhood. So instead, the more compassionate answer, to coax BoJack along the road to actually being better. At the end, we don't know that BoJack is never going to relapse again, is never going to mess up again. In fact, it seems pretty likely that he will, but the important thing is that we understand that a backslide is not insurmountable. BoJack is not beyond hope, and neither is anyone who relates to him. But this show is not about feeling okay. It's not about the complacency and hopelessness. It's really about being forced to do the hard work.
It gets easier.
Huh?
Every day it gets a little easier.
Yeah?
But you gotta do it every day. That's the hard part. But it does get easier.
Okay.
This show is more prescriptive than most. It's a little preachy at times, but I don't necessarily mind that. It's abundantly clear that BoJack is the villain in his own story. He's creating most of his own problems, but he's also the only one who can save himself. Not only do we want to root for BoJack, we have to. And I think this tough love approach was a really deft handling of a problematic main character. This show would lose so much of its impact if we weren't supposed to like him.
It's my story to tell, but then so many other women have the same story. What, am I a spokesperson for them now? Could I be the face of a movement? I mean, what if I get it wrong? I mean, I resent the fact that Nick can get up there and talk about his stomach condition, and it's not like he has to be the poster boy for bulimia, but I get up there and whatever I say, it's like, what are we saying about women?
So we have to talk about women. As a note, I have not seen all of The Sopranos or Mad Men, and I know that some of the women in those shows should probably be included here, but I can't speak to it, so I'm just going to call this the Skyler White effect, even though she's probably not the first example of this. People have been hating women for a long time. I would define the Skyler White effect as when a female character gets a disproportionate amount of hate from the fan base compared to the male characters who do objectively, morally worse things. To illustrate this, let's watch a short educational video.
Hi, thanks for coming today. I was wondering about Sally, because she's so annoying, and I love her as a character, but I hate her as a person, and I have to pause it because she's so cringy. And I was wondering if you were ever nervous or about having such a main character be so unlikable, especially since she's like the object of Barry's affection, and she's so shallow and selfish, and...
She's based on me. So, cool. Right on.
I love this clip. She's a fan, presumably, so imagine in front of an auditorium full of people inadvertently saying to one of your heroes, "I think you're annoying and selfish and unlikable." I would never psychologically recover from this. I do actually feel bad for this woman. I feel bad when people get clowned on, even if they deserve it. And I know that I'm perpetuating it right now. I'm part of the problem. I'm throwing tomatoes at her and saying, I do feel bad for you though. I have no principles, clearly. It's why I relate to the Succession characters. Sally in the HBO show Barry has really fallen prey to the Skyler White effect. And it is truly beyond me that people don't like Sally. I kind of understood it for Skyler, but I can't even begin to see it for Sally. She is so funny. I have in fact memorized her entire monologue from season 2 and can perform it as a party trick. I'm terrified, okay? Because my piece is real. It's not a character, it's me. Truth with a capital T, all caps actually. I'm thinking like a writer now. I mean, this was stuff that I couldn't even talk about without lying, and here I am about to strip naked in front of a bunch of strangers and share something that I am massively ashamed of. I mean, not literally, I don't believe in nudity unless it drives the story forward. One day I'm gonna set the world record for like the fastest recitation of that. Maybe I can do it on like all one breath. Bill Hader's defense of Sally is usually along the lines of,
"But Barry kills people."
Which, true, we've seen the show, Bill. We know that. But I actually don't think this is a great defense. I don't think that most people who don't like Sally, or Skyler for that matter, don't like her because of any moral issues. We all know that being an annoying theater nerd is not as bad as being a literal hitman. But when we watch TV, we don't judge characters based on some objective sense of morality. More often it's based on this nebulous concept of likability. Who do we find charming, funny, sympathetic, attractive? Do we recognize a glimmer of ourselves that feels distant enough to forgive? Or do we recognize a part of ourselves that feels uncomfortably close to home? Another answer people often give to the Skyler White effect is that in fiction, it's easier to like characters who are evil in ways that are more distant to our own lives. So most of us probably do not know any hitmen. Therefore, it's a more theoretical type of evil that we don't have to confront as directly as, say, an abusive partner. I think this is getting closer to what's actually going on here and takes into account personal taste. Some characters may remind you of really bad personal experiences and relationships, and you may never like them because of that. But this is still an argument from a place of morality, so I don't think it's getting to the root of the issue. And the root of the issue, in my opinion, is that being a tortured hitman is pretty fucking cool. But being a self-centered theater kid, maybe less cool. It seems like when we have these likability debates, why do people like Walt but not Skyler, Barry but not Sally? Everyone starts arguing about morals, willfully ignoring the reasons why people are actually drawn to fictional characters. I'm a woman of taste, as previously stated, so I like both Barry and Sally, both Walt and Skyler. So I get it. I'm not sick of the tortured male anti-hero genre. I love a bad, sad man. It is really compelling to see these characters grapple with the decisions they have to make and act on their own worst impulses while still retaining enough humanity to regret it. But I also love the quieter, less life or death storylines, and I really like seeing the collision of these two types of characters. With Better Call Saul now complete, we have a really interesting counterpoint to the Skyler White effect, and that is Kim Wexler. Everyone loves Kim to the point that it sort of became a meme. Like, people would interview Ray Seahorn and say, "Oh, I hope nothing happens to Kim. Oh my god, I just love Kim." And look, I love Kim too. We all love Kim. But sometimes it felt like people were compensating for something. Like, everyone in the Breaking Bad fandom was a little embarrassed of their past misogyny and just had to prove how much they love women. And direct comparisons between Kim and Skyler have often been made. Our two blonde female leads, right? The less self-aware of these takes basically amounted to, now this is how you write a strong female character. Unlike Skyler, that fucking bitch. Oof. Yowza. What the hell's going on here? People usually explain this by saying Kim was a lot more supportive of Jimmy. At a certain point, she even took a lead in their schemes. And there are countless scenes of her defending Jimmy to other people in his life, even if privately she challenges him or is upset at him. Kim's the ideal girlfriend. She lets you do whatever you want, including crime, She defends you in front of your brother, in front of a cartel guy. She's way out of your league, as everyone constantly reminds you, but she's in love with you. She breaks up with you because she loves you too much. I think what didn't even really occur to me until I had read one too many tweets or Reddit comments where guys were just gushing about how Kim is the perfect girlfriend character, that I think some guys, I said some, you can't get me for that, some guys will evaluate a female character not based on what they would do if they were in her shoes, but how they would feel about her if she were their girlfriend. And this is probably something that is super obvious to a lot of you, but I just did not consider it until I kept running into these like Kim Wexler is my waifu takes. Because I kind of assume that everyone's like me until proven wrong, and when I watch Better Call Saul, I'm not evaluating Jimmy based on how I would feel about him if he were my boyfriend, although maybe I should. With main characters, regardless of gender, I'm putting myself in their shoes and thinking about how I would feel and what I would do if I was in their position. Like, not to brag or anything. So the Skyler White hate, it's all clicking into place, right? At least for me, someone who didn't really get it. It's not that she's a weak female character, as so many would like to convince you. You know, they're just so feminist that they hate this female character because she's just so weak. That's why. They're feminists. No, it's not because she's a badly written female character. It's because she's a bad wife. It's so bleak. Like, women, do you want to be likable? It's easy. Just don't cheat on your husband, who won't let you divorce him and is forcing you to choose between either turning him into the authorities, which would ruin your life, or letting him continue to live in your house and sleep in your bed and endanger you and your children. I can't imagine why someone in that situation might want to reclaim a semblance of power, or, God forbid, escape their circumstances for an afternoon. She should have cheated on him more. It was the greatest thing she ever did.
This whole thing, all of this, it's all about me.
I have a hard time writing video essays, which is why I haven't written very many of them, because I always get to a point where I'm like, this is obvious and self-evident and pointless, and you don't even need to say this, just shut the fuck up. That's what my inner voice says to me. And, you know, I do think this is somewhat self-evident and obvious. People like villains. People have always liked villains. But now we have these Hays Code wannabe losers on Twitter saying, oh, you're not supposed to like the characters. But I'm not gonna pretend like I don't know where this is coming from, okay? I think Breaking Bad played a big role in sending us down this path of discourse. Vince Gilligan famously set out to change Mr. Chips into Scarface, to take a protagonist and gradually but irrevocably morph him into a villain. And it's been now nearly 10 years since Breaking Bad ended, which, by the way, I can never pass up an opportunity to brag. I watched the final season live. So many of my friends have like jumped on board in the past year. We kind of had like a Breaking Bad renaissance, and they were like, wow, this show is actually really good. And I was like, I know. Imagine watching Ozymandias live on AMC with commercials with your parents and then going to high school the next day and like trying to talk about it with a boy in your AP Gov class who you have a crush on. I was there. Anyway, it's been now 10 years since Breaking Bad ended, and this is still a topic of debate. Did they succeed in turning Walt from the hero into the villain? Vince Gilligan has said that his mom still liked Walt, even at the end, and that surprised him. But a lot of people did. For me, Walt reached truly hateable status in season 5. But those last couple episodes, he turned the corner a bit. He admitted the truth to Skyler. He saved Jesse. Too little too late, sure, but it's a taste of redemption. At the bitter end. It complicates it. It's not an ending you would give to a despicable villain. It's a hero's ending. Fallen from grace, but he still basically gets what he wants. To torment Gretchen and Elliot a bit, to transfer his fortune to his family, to die on his own terms. Walt never shook the label of protagonist. He's still our primary point of view character, and that impacts how the audience views things more than I think the writers bargained for. It's hard for us to totally give up on him. Now, Walt at his most villainous is not Heisenberg, okay? This is the problem, because Heisenberg is cool. We were never going to hate Walt for running over nameless child-murdering drug dealers with his Pontiac Aztek, right? That's awesome. But Breaking Bad does a phenomenal job showing Walt's true capacity for evil in his personal relationships. On my most recent rewatch, I was really struck by the scene between Walt and Skyler in the season 5 episode 51, where he corners her in their bedroom and reveals just how far he'll go to keep her under his thumb. This scene is terrifying and sickening. Walt might be the character that you're not supposed to like. I'll admit that. I think this is our guy, our boogeyman, we found him. The writers and actors were certainly surprised that people stayed on Walt's side instead of Skyler's. And just like Bill Hader can say, Barry kills people, they said Walt kills people. But no one cares about that. The only thing that can really shift that likability dynamic is something a little riskier and a little more subtle, to have Walt abuse the people close to him. That's something that audiences are less likely to glorify, but it still wasn't quite enough. I think emotional abuse is tricky for people. They either don't recognize it or don't take it seriously. Walt is explicitly, obviously abusive. So is Logan Roy in Succession. But a lot of people only pick up on the power that these characters project and buy into that illusion. Did people glorify Walt? Do people glorify Logan? Yeah, of course. And that, obviously, is what these you're not supposed to like the characters people are responding to, and applying it to other works of fiction where maybe it's not as good a fit. But look, I said I still like Walt, because I do. And the final piece of our equation here is, of course, charisma. This unquantifiable, undefinable thing that the best actors have, that the most magnetic people have, that makes it impossible for us to not like them, no matter what they do. Bryan Cranston is like 95% charisma by weight. I think he's insane. Even compared to some of the other unlikable characters I've talked about, I think he brings a uniquely lethal dose of charisma, and the writers had to fight really hard to overcome that by putting him in increasingly pathetic, cringe scenarios, but even that wasn't enough. TV is a uniquely character-driven medium. Because of how much time we spend with them, it's really important to the success of a TV show that people get attached enough to the characters that they want to keep coming back for more. So this whole argument, you're not supposed to like the characters, feels sort of antithetical to the entire appeal of a TV series. I can't imagine tuning in weekly to a TV show where I hate all the characters. Actually, I kind of did that with The White Lotus Season 1, where I genuinely hated everyone except for Armand. So I was watching it just for Armand, and I didn't really enjoy my time with that show. And I probably should have stopped watching it, but I didn't, and that's my fault. So I guess, I don't know, what's my conclusion? People who weren't in the trenches with us when Breaking Bad was airing took the lessons learned from that fandom and just sort of non-discriminately sprayed them all over the internet and said, if you like a character who does anything bad, you're missing the point of the show and also you're a piece of shit. And this discourse has been particularly intense with Succession because it feels worse when people like a character who's bad in a more mundane, realistic way. But I think the girlies that are hard at work making Kendall Roy fan cams are the backbone of the internet and we need to respect them. Leave them in their natural habitat and everyone else, find your joy. Find characters you love or that you love to hate or whatever your thing is. Art is not prescriptive. You're not supposed to feel one way or another about it. Look, I know I said earlier that you're supposed to empathize with the Succession characters. I was kind of hoping that you'd forget about that so I could make my conclusion work. Maybe it seems like audiences have an alarming capacity to empathize with characters who do bad things, as long as they're white men, I guess. But I don't think the right response to that is to demand that people disconnect from their empathy. Let's all just hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I don't know, I just wrote like 5,000 words on this topic because I really love Roman Roy, and I think I'm about to get toasted this season when he becomes a full-fledged fascist. Can't wait. Anyway, I'm gonna link the Kendall Roy brutal fan cam below to properly credit this genius, but I am gonna show the rest of it because it's a work of art and I think it makes my point better than I can.
I'm so insecure, I think.
Just kidding, we're not gonna do that. This is the first time that I am trying to monetize a YouTube video, so you're gonna have to forgive me for being stupid in the planning stages and thinking that I'm like immune to the law and consequences, which is also why I relate to the Succession characters. I thought I could get away with playing like 45 seconds of an Olivia Rodrigo song in this video and still try and make ad revenue. You cannot do that, it turns out. So you guys are just gonna have to watch it on Tumblr. Like, I don't know what to tell you. This was a script that I started writing like right after season 3 of Succession, and then I completely tabled it for, you know, a year and a half or however long it's been. And then when I was sort of ramping myself back up into Succession insanity, I returned to it and did this. So hopefully this was fun, kind of experimental for me. And hopefully this like background works. You know, I only have so many angles of my like studio apartment that I can use as a filming backdrop, and I tried to clean things up like a little bit. I put plants places where they never go. I did not move my window air conditioner off the floor though, because I'm just trying to be real and authentic with you guys. And everyone knows that a window air conditioner in the winter sits on the floor directly underneath the window where it goes in the summer. You just take it out, put it down, it sits there for 6 months, pick it up, put it back in. That's all it does. Updates. I kind of said at the end of another video that I wasn't sure if my friend Savannah and I were gonna come back for season 4 of Succession. That was before they said this would be the final season. So that definitely changed the equation a little bit. And I would say that both of us are like really committed to making it work now. We might have to restructure things a little bit, but we are going to do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. I have a coffee and I want to show you my loon mug. Isn't she beautiful?